Hey guys, Editing Charmy here. I just wanted to step in really quick before the video got started. I just wanted to give you guys a bit of context as to why the video is starting the way that it is. This is a clip that is pulled from my live stream, so it's not anything that is pre-recorded, and a lot of the time there are topics of discussion that pop up during the live stream that I do think that are, they're pretty worthy to put onto YouTube. So that's what this is. You will hear me talking at people, but you won't see the chat on my on the overlay at all because most of the time I forget to have it up and it's in the spur of the moment thing, so I don't bother bringing the chat up. So but I end up asking or reading the question so you guys will at least have context as to how this topic got introduced. So that is all. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave your thoughts below. Also, I stream weekly, so Wednesdays typically start at 10 p.m. CST, and I also stream Friday through Sunday, 10 p.m. CST, and until however long it goes. But yeah, come join in. It's always a good time. We do a lot of stuff over there, and maybe you'll get something out of it too. All right. I will see you guys on the other side. Bye. Hi, Charmy. I really want to get into drawing, but I'm not sure where to start. Can you share how you started and what to focus on studying in the beginning, like fundamentals and stuff? Okay. So, a couple things I think that helped. Let me turn down the music so you guys can hear. When I started, I initially wanted to, I didn't know the difference between concept design and video game design. I thought they were the same thing, which we all are very aware that they are not, right? But little Charmy did not know that. And I was very influenced by, also, I'm going to catch up to you guys' messages late, so if you're saying something in context of something I said previously, I'm not going to be able to see it until after I get this explanation out of the way, okay? So sorry in advance. But the things that I was influenced by was Final Fantasy, especially with a lot of the character designs that Tetsuya Nomura did, right? As well as, before I knew anime was called anime, Sailor Moon, and then Studio Ghibli, right? And so at first I was like, wow, I really want to get into video game design because I really like characters. And it wasn't until later that I understood there was a difference between, you know, video game design and concept art. And I thought I wanted to do concept art, and that wasn't the case. It was character design. So the reason why I said that is because it's important to know what it is that you want to do, right? And each thing is going to require a different path per se. Art as a whole has its generalized fundamentals, but each branch has its own tier of knowledge that you need, right? So if you feel led to environments, or if you feel led to character design or concept art, each of those things will be different. Now, for me, once I understood that I wanted, it was characters that I really liked, and I enjoyed the design aspect of that. The first thing that I had to understand was, well, before even jumping into anatomy, I had to learn basic drawing skills, right? So those fundamentals included understanding how to draw your basic shapes, or you'll hear it as primitive forms. To the average individual, basic shapes is plenty and easy to understand, right? It's not all this fancy mumbo jumbo. Your basic shapes will include things like spheres, cylinders, wedges, cubes, the big one, donuts, what else am I forgetting? And cones, right? So the reason why basic shapes are incredibly important to do is because those are your literal building blocks of how to draw anything. It doesn't matter if it's it doesn't matter if it's an environment. It doesn't matter if it's industrial design, which leads more into like vehicles and crazy architecture to some degree or another, right? All of these things, including the human body, start with very basic shapes. So I had to understand what those even, like, I knew what they look like, but drawing them was a completely different realm. I didn't know, but I didn't jump right into that. I started with just kind of fumbling around with trying to redraw Sailor Moon characters, maybe a little bit of Dragon Ball here and there. But that didn't last too long, and I want to a quick segment here. I want to, say allow that phase to happen longer. It is really important to just play in the beginning, because I jumped. My period of doing like really fun sketches was very short-lived, and the way that art was presented at the time that I started, it was pretty strict. And it was like, oh, you have to do this, that, and third, right? Not by any like of personal teachers that I've had, but the artist community itself. And what's available now was not available to me then. So things were really strict. Things were also gate kept. There was a lot of gatekeeping. So finding that information was difficult, but as I did start finding those things, it was learning how to do the very not so fun stuff. So like I said, the basic shapes, and then learning how to draw straight lines, and learning how to do arcs, right? And learning the difference between drawing from your wrist and your shoulder and your elbow. Now, I know all that sounds scary. These are just the things that I was learning in the early stages of my drawing. So once I felt like I kind of understood what that stuff meant, then I started to take a deep dive into, okay, well, how do I draw a body? Where do I go? What do I look at from there? I didn't, as a kid, I didn't really have money, so I was on DeviantArt looking for any, like, how to draw bodies, essentially, before YouTube became a thing. Now, granted, you don't have to go through this, because there's so much available now that I can just be like, yeah, buy this book, take this book, go to this YouTube, watch that person. All that's readily available and a lot easier to get into art now. But I spent time trying to understand what that looked like, and thankfully my parents were very supportive of the thing that I was doing. So, they would, like, during like my birthday or like Christmas, they would buy like the art books that I was looking at, like the How to Draw Manga, which is a very classic book. But from that point, as I started to understand how to kind of build up the human body, going through understanding what gesture is, and then because mind you, anatomy came last. I did not learn anatomy first at all. I was familiar with a couple of things, but the biggest thing was, well, how do I make a body stand? Like, how do I figure out proportions and all this stuff? So it was a lot of that, a lot of copying. And then at the time, before I learned about Sakimi's Patreon, on DeviantArt, she would have these little she had these little, let me see, I bet you I can find it. Okay, so I remember when I came across this, which was, I think, in 2011. Is this okay to show? It is, yeah. So I remember starting to see a lot of posts like this, right? And trying to learn from stuff like this, right? So it's like, okay, here's, how to build a head, how to look at the differences between a male and a female body, and how those basic shapes can turn into a full-fledged figure. So I started looking at a lot of stuff like this and trying to copy these things. And then that is when other fundamentals started to click in, because and they happen, they a lot of these things happen simultaneously. So as I started to learn about how to build a character, I started learning about light and shadow, and well, how do you make a flat thing look 3D? So I learned about how to render out basic shapes and how that can be replicated to a human figure. And it does seem like a lot, and it's because it is, right? Getting into art is exciting. It's also intimidating because there are so many fundamental things to be able to express the things that you want to express, right? And I don't want to be one of those people that tell you you have to be very strict about your learning, but there are truly some things you just cannot skip, and this is one of them. And I'm telling you, this is a lived experience. You will it will show up later in your art where you are probably lacking a fundamental, right? And you can't hide it. You can only hide your mistakes for so long, and take the time to learn these things, right? The only time people can really say wonky anatomy is a stylistic choice is because they already have an understanding. Some people will use, oh, this is my style, as a placeholder, as because I don't know what this is and I don't really understand it, so I'm just going to say it's my style. No, you just don't know how to express this thing, and so it looks strange. And because you might feel uncomfortable or embarrassed about it, you're going to say it's a style. It's not your style. You just don't understand. And that's okay that you don't understand. It is okay. Take the time to learn. So anyway, from that point on, this is where I started to get into Patreon, not as a creator, but as a supporter. And this is where I started to learn even more. So like Sakimi really was Sakimi and probably Loish were my early building blocks of art, especially when it came to rendering. Sakimi had a lot of tutorials about everything that you could think about when it came to character drawing, right? You have stylizing faces, how to draw pinup style characters, hair, texture, all of that shit that you can think of, right? And so I spent a lot of time there, and that was like my main source of learning because, again, there weren't a lot of things that were really available. I know this is a long-winded answer, but you asked me and I am telling you. So from that point on, I wanted to expand a bit more outside of I don't want to be in an echo chamber, so to speak. So then that's around the time I found out about Psychra and Cintiq and Ahmed. Truly, I'll say once I came across Ahmed, that's when a lot of my stuff started to change because I looked at art very differently. And from that point, it made me think about how to express, like how to, I guess, deepen my knowledge about characters and design. And they had a Gumroad. I should say still have, right? Again, I paid for a lot of stuff, because again, it was more like specific things, right? As opposed to some things that were on YouTube that you can get lost on YouTube Versity very quickly, but I can link some ones that are like actually good right now. Let me see, hold on. So when I came across Ahmed, he had a Patreon as well, but it wasn't until much later that I knew, and then he stopped running it by the time I joined. I was like, oh shit. But he did have his Patreon rewards added onto his Gumroad, and this stuff almost immediately like gave me an art boost. And it may not, all of your artists will be different, right? Who got you to a certain place will be different. I'm so glad I came across Med because it's where I am right now. But he had stuff like this, right? Where it talks about torso anatomy. Yeah, this has the real time. So there's like sped up versions and real time versions. Here's things about like drapery and torso painting. So when I started seeing this kind of stuff, this was my investment for art school, right? I would put money aside and be like, okay, which Gumroad do I want now, or what, like, how many can I buy based off the budget that I saved towards? Because these were very direct tutorials, and I didn't have to sift through a bunch of stuff. I'm not saying you have to do this, by the way. You literally don't have to, because YouTube exists with a lot of shit now. So you can skip this part. I'm just saying this is what it was for me. And so I learned a ton from him. I learned about line quality. I learned about shape language. I learned so much stuff. And he's where I feel why I understand color the way that I understand it, because I really like the way that Med handles color. It's probably my favorite, and still is to this day. And there's still some things that I can't capture, but that's besides the point. So when you do start, and whatever that might look like for you, it's okay if you don't know right away. If you want to dabble and be like, okay, let's just, even if you're not good at it, it doesn't matter. If you want to explore environments for a little bit, explore environments. If you want to explore character design, explore character design. If you want to explore industrial design, explore that, right? However, if you feel that you have a pretty strong idea of what it is that you want to do, for example, let's just say characters seem to be that will directly affect your learning path, because now you're like, okay, going back to what I had said earlier about when it comes down to learning characters, well, learn how to draw some basic shapes, know how to express those shapes into 3D forms, and then from that point, figure out how to build them up like Legos to make them look like very simplified mannequins. And then when you do, I recommend learning things in pairs, and what I mean by pairs, things that directly affect the thing that you're doing right now, right? So for example, sure, again, let's say character design is of that. A facet of your fundamental, you're going to have to tackle light and shadow, right? When you are doing that, I would recommend, if you're going to learn light and shadow, learn color theory with it. And light and shadow is not as it's not as complicated as color. It's probably a couple of tiers down, but it's the very thing that you need to know how to showcase anything in 3D. But learning color in unison with light and shadow is also going to teach you how color is affected in light, how color is affected in darkness, how you can showcase what do two colors do when they're next to each other, right? And if you're going to learn, or when you learn perspective, I recommend learning composition with that. So that's what I mean by learning those things in pairs, because it is possible to do, but I wouldn't recommend learning perspective and anatomy at the same time. Like you're I wouldn't recommend it, okay? Unless you want to short circuit and be incredibly overwhelmed. I don't recommend learning those two things at the same time. Just at the end, you're going to do what you want to do. It's just the information is too dense and it takes time to digest that stuff. So it's just a friendly warning or suggestion, I would say, to not do that. But there are things that are available now that can help guide you if you're like, well, I don't have money, Charmy. Okay, well, don't worry. There are YouTube channels that can help you for free get all the early stage things that you need. Mark Renee is probably, I would argue, someone who's fairly good about going from simple things to turning them into like characters or objects. He also has a very specified playlist for learning for beginner artists, and you will see it when you go to his channel, and it says, You click playlist, it'll literally say beginner artist start here. That is all that you need. Okay, I know that was a lot, but were you with me? Were you with me? Thank you so much for sharing and tips, of course, of course.